it does not come out until August, and you guys have made a very smart decision to say, I'm gonna go to this movie that's about screens, because you're gonna see a lot of stuff, and you're gonna see a lot of your own lives in this movie. I saw this at Sundance. It's quite a different kind of emotional roller coaster, and it's got John Cho in it for like 100 minutes, so it's gonna be tight. So, most importantly, we got other movies coming up the rest of the week, including a documentary called Abducted in Plain Sight. We got the guest here, Sky Borgman, on Thursday. If you know anybody who sells tickets, they might be able to sell you the 8th grade ticket, which is sold out, I'm sorry to say, but that's just how hype it is at Chicago Critics Film Festival. Most importantly, voting is extremely cool. Extremely cool. You might have heard me tell that to you. Collecting ballots, which is like the coolest thing you can do other than go to a film festival run by film critics. So please vote. Let us know what you thought of the movie. 1 is poor, but 5 is like, yes, that's a good movie. Let us know, and then we'll have an audience word at the end of the festival. I think that's it. I'm going to introduce the director, though. Aneesh Chaganty is in the house. Come on up stage.
Hi. Thank you guys so much for being here. Thank you to CCFF for having us, for hosting us, and welcome to the Chicago premiere of Searching. This is the first time we're showing it out here at a film festival. Glad to be here. I've said this a few times before, but the movie you guys are about to see was sort of made with like more or less 5 people in one editing room for the course of 2 years and 2 iMac computers. So anytime we show the movie, screen larger than that, in a space larger than that, with more people than, right there, is awesome. So we're really glad to be here. And the co-writer of the film and producer of the film, Seb Ohanian, is also here. We'll take some questions afterwards, I think. Yeah, give it up for him. Hopefully you have that reaction after the film as well. Yeah, that's it. If you like the movie, it comes out August 3rd. If you don't like the movie, it still comes out August 3rd. Thank you guys so much. Enjoy it.
Stick around with Q&A after. Holy shit, right? Right? I undersold it. I was watching it and I was like, oh, I undersold it. Holy shit. Without further ado, the co-writers, Aneesh Chaganty and Seb Ohanian, are going to come up on stage right now. We're going to talk about it. So come on up, guys. Welcome back. Welcome back.
Hello.
Okay, my first question is for the audience. Did anybody see at the very beginning the news report about the guy in the ravine who survived 9 days?
Nice.
Okay.
Oh, great. We never asked that before. Thanks for asking.
Yeah. So I was watching it again. I was like, oh my God, you motherfucker. Like, there's a... Yes.
Yeah, nice catch.
There's there's a TMZ report. He does his first interview in 2 years. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah, congratulations.
There's a lot of smoke coming out of my mouth. I can't somehow.
So cool. Okay, so when it comes to piecing together a movie that is so detail-oriented, how precise is it and how close were you guys to being like, well, we want to be crafty, we want it to be about kind of where you're looking and information, but we also don't want to blow it?
Like giving too much of the answer away?
Yeah, essentially, yeah, like kind of you're teasing it at the time. It'll play so well on a second time, but I mean, for a movie about information just being about where you look.
Yeah, I mean, it's crucial. I mean, there's literally, if you watch this movie again, there's like you can piece together the mystery just by pausing the movie at various points in the film, because there's always clues at the side of the movie that you may not have caught because the cursor is moving in the way that's supposed to catch your eye, where there's like a clue over here. So all of that was something that, I mean, the placement of every single window and website article and the copy on every news article, or like every subject line on email, or every text message, or the dates of all the files on Finder, all of that was designed and tested, and like we would show this movie in feedback screenings like to groups of 12 to 15 people, and kind of just, Seb would actually, not me, would just interrogate them, like it was just like this hostage situation.
I remember our first feedback screening, again, like Andy said, it's a small room, 12 close friends. who had no idea what they were about to get into. We locked the doors and we're like, all right, so let's start with question number 1. And we had 210 questions, by the way.
On the second frame of the movie.
Like literally, I'd be up there like, all right, so that moment when David, like clicks on that one link, did anyone notice, catfish? And like, they're like, what moment? I'm like, oh, we're gonna pull it up right now. Pull up the image, and like everyone's like trying to get out, and we're like, no, you gotta raise your hand.
It's like a 3-hour situation.
It was so crucial to us to make sure that people could follow the mystery, but never get ahead of it. And like the other side of it is like, just because you kind of touched upon like all the details that some of you guys picked up on. Like part of it is just because we had to put something there.
Yeah.
And why not have fun with it and kind of put little clues and ironically, like Aneesh did like most of the work on this, but if you watch the movie really closely, you might actually notice like there's several subplots happening in the corners of the screen.
Yeah, simultaneous to the main movie. It's just different characters that you can see and pick up and watch their whole storyline. I mean, we did the math on it. Not the math, we just looked at it. The amount of copy or just text that we had to write for the movie was about like 15 or 20 times the script. And it was all done while we were writing it, and then being like, shit, there's like a whole other, the worst was like the Gmail front page. Oh my gosh. That shit was so much work. Like, okay, which character haven't we seen in a while? Like, okay, what's their development, their storyline?
But my favorite is like, and this is all credit to Aneesh, like, in the world of the story, apparently a week before the movie starts, David and Kim had gone on like a date, like on
another drink sometime.
Yeah. So like Hannah Couch messages him on iMessage. On the corner you could see like one of his messages. She's like, hey, I had a great dinner. I'd love to get another drink, maybe this week. And then you see that same message again, like a couple like days later in the story. And then a week later, she's like, hey, like I just realized why you haven't been responding. Your daughter is missing. Maybe next week you're available. Like, so like Aneesh was able to put all these clues throughout the entire thing. In fact, I remember like one time I was watching the cut and I saw in the Gmail you put an email from Seb from me.
Did I really?
You put that in the movie. Like I was watching the movie and like I paused it and like for a brief moment.
Or are you calling the whole plot? Is that you? Yeah. So the Sev. Okay. So there's one part if you pause it where Sev, the character Sev,
which
like
does not exist.
predicts the entire plot accurately. It's just like I'm pretty sure it was the detective's kid and what's going on. Yeah. It's just like this whole thing.
So there are so many movies that use technology, that try to be modern, try to be ahead of the curve, try to talk about the age we live in now. But this is not a cynical one. This one is not about like, oh, the things that connect us actually disconnect us. It's like, no, this is like, these are our lives. We all have phones. Do you guys use FaceTime that much?
Not that much.
Okay, but it works,
Yeah, it had to work. Like, how else are we gonna see someone's face?
Yeah. There's like a non-cynical approach to technology. That it can be emotional, that it can have character.
That is I'm so glad you said that. I think that's our first question. That's one of the biggest reasons I think I was so attracted, and eventually, I mean, like everyone was so attracted to the project. But I don't know. I feel like every time you go on Facebook or Instagram, or like you see these PSAs, or just Black Mirror, or just anything that's going around, everything is about how negative technology is, and like how much it hurts us, and how much it alienates us, and how obsessed we are with likes and all that stuff. And there's obviously veracity to all of that, like it's true to a big degree. But for us, it was just like, that's just one slice of a pie. That's just saying like, that's like, look at this hammer, the hammer is bad, and it's just like, you can't put a value judgment on that because you can use it for 1,000 different things. So like for us, it was the big objective with this, and the reason we were so excited about it was that like this movie in a way could use technology and show hopefully a more holistic picture as far as its use goes.
Do you have anything you want to?
No, what you said perfectly.
Sure. So why did you decide with this kind of concept to talk about, or to use technology and to talk about, Reddit, ages, and so forth for a missing person story? Was that always the idea of the missing person story, and then the idea of applying it to so much of screen culture work from there?
Actually, it was actually the exact opposite of that. Long story short, Aneesh and I, writing partners, he directs, I produce. We had an opportunity with this production company, Basilevs, which financed and produced the movie, and they had produced a movie called Unfriended.
Which takes place on like Skype and on the computer screen.
Exactly, and when we met with them, they were like, can you guys pitch us an idea for a short film? And we came up with the idea for Searching as a short.
Yeah, and when we put together this short film, at the time, none of us wanted to do a feature film because we were like, there's no way. We saw Unfriended, and we were like, okay. And like, don't tell the finance.
Is that Seymour or did Unfriended?
Yeah, Unfriended 2.
No, unfriended as well.
Yeah. It was the same production company. And you know, it's for obvious reasons. I think for all the right reasons, we were like, there's no way we're ever going to do this. But a short film sounds interesting to us. So basically, we came back. We had an idea for first Search. It was called Search then, but now it's called Searching. But it was the short film of that. And I remember being back in LA for a Google photo shoot, and they were like called us into a meeting, and it was Sev and I sitting across like a desk of financiers and producers and all that. And they were like, hey, we actually don't want to make this as a short. We want to make this as a feature. Sev and Aneesh, you guys can write it. Sev, you can produce it. Aneesh, you can direct your first movie, and we'll finance the whole thing. What do you guys say? And immediately I said no. And it was just like, instinctual reaction that I had. That I was just like, oh shit. And this guy's like,
I was like literally like kicking him, like, what was that? Sorry.
But in that moment, it felt like we would be, you know, taking this concept, this gimmick, and stretching it in. We'd take something that we found a way to work in 8 minutes and stretching it right back into a gimmick, and that's like not what you want to do as a first movie, let alone any movie. So we left the room, and I said no, and Seth said we'll keep in touch, and we left, and we kept talking about the sort of like enormity of the opportunity, and like how, and I knew like no first-time filmmaker ever gets told like here's the money to make a movie, you know, like regardless of the conceit that they were asking us to do. So we're like, okay, the way we like do justice to this idea or like justice to the opportunity is by talking our way into a wall. We know we're gonna hit a wall. Like, let's just talk our way into it. If we find something, we find something, but like, we're gonna hit a wall. And then one day, we didn't hit a wall. Like one day we texted each other saying, hey, I have an idea for an opening scene. And he's like, I have an idea for an opening scene. We got on the phone. I was in Brooklyn at the time, he was in LA. And we both pitched each other the exact same opening scene, which is that like, Pixar meets like Google commercial opening montage. I'm like, how the hell that's crazy. And then, but most of all, in that opening scene, there was something about it that we were just like, whoa, it all of a sudden felt emotional, it felt thrilling, it felt like there were characters
like
here.
Our goal was with the opening sequence was that if people watch that, they might just forget after 5 minutes that what they're watching is taking place on a computer screen.
Yeah, which was something that the other films before it, we didn't think that had accomplished. And we're like, well, if you can make people feel that way, even periodically throughout a full movie, that's awesome. Maybe we should swing for that. So I quit my job, moved to LA, and we made a movie.
Wow. Congratulations.
Thanks.
For our first movie, too, that's great. I would say, like, talk about how they use technology, and you use like close-ups to kind of. It's not just about like looking at a screen. It's about like what's kind of narrowing in narratively on that, and that's kind of a unique choice you guys have compared to other kind of screen movies. Was that like a point of in the screenwriting process? Was that like a challenge particularly?
Absolutely. I think for us, there's been a couple of movies that have taken place on screens, like Unfriended, for example. And when we were starting to write the script, we actually would take a break every day for 30 minutes and eat lunch and watch like 30 minutes of everything. Like if it's ever taking place on a screen, we've seen it,
yeah.
Including the Modern Family episode, which I love. And basically for us, like one thing that we found was that like there's been like 100 years of cinematic techniques developed over the past 100 years, and like those screen movies didn't take advantage of those. And we're like, why can't we have close-ups and zooms and camera moves and cinematic storytelling in a way that hasn't been done? And maybe if we did that, that's kind of how we came up with all that.
So, and then I have to ask then, because you guys believe in it, but you have actors that you're really relying on to essentially do like green screen acting. So how did you get them to really believe that this was going to come together?
Oh, man.
Or at what point did it like really seem to click?
I think I don't know if to anybody, including the crew, it ever truly 100% clicked what they were doing until they saw the final movie. We got them to like 70%, and I was just like, that's good enough. 70%, you know what we're doing. But to convince them, both of them, but first John, because we had to cast an entire family around John, so he was the first person we went after. To sort of convince, you're basically asking them to leap into the dark, and like I'm nobody, like I'd never made a movie before. I just was this 25-year-old kid just being like, hey, John Cho, like, want to be in a movie? Like, it takes place on the screen. Everyone's gonna see it. And like, it was just a lot of convincing people because anyone's first, reaction to this is there's no way that this is gonna work. And it was our first reaction too, so it was like constantly trying to take people through our own like our own hesitations about the project and why we're saying yes to it after so long. And you know, there's a lot of ups and downs. Like how we got John Cho was like, it's a crazy story. He said no to the project at first, and like I basically had to beg him, and he said yes purely just based on like me being like, trust me, please, please, please. So it was like a lot of asking people to take a huge leap of faith with us, and a huge credit goes to the actors especially, because like they didn't have to do this, and like it was a huge risk at every point in it, and everyone around them, no one would have blamed them for saying no to this project.
Can you, I was watching an interview you guys talked about, and you had 2 different cuts, basically, of this movie. I just need you to share the sadistic story about your production.
So like, on the note of Aneesh saying that like, nobody had any idea what this was gonna turn into until they saw the final cut, including us, one of the ideas that we came up with early in the process of pre-production was, you know, we didn't have a ton of money to make this movie. I mean, you guys have seen the movie, there's aerial shots, there's car stuff, there's lakes, there's extras, there's ravine stuff. We shot it in 13 days. And part of
quick shoot.
Exactly, and part of that meant that we had to really know what we were trying to make with the film. And of course, we're doing a kind of storytelling that hadn't really been done before. We came up with this idea to kind of bring our editors on board, and they started editing the film 7 weeks before we started.
They were the first people hired. Like before we hired anyone on production, we hired the editors, and we brought them in, and they were looking at an empty Premiere. Premiere is like the program that we use to edit, and like they're looking at an empty Premiere timeline, and it was just like, get to work. And they literally just started screen capping the internet for 7 weeks, putting together the movie, as it were, just like a rough comp of the movie. And this other cut that it ended up at the end of 7 weeks being an hour and 40-minute cut of the movie, starring me playing every role: the mom, the daughter, the detective, all of the friends.
DVD extra, please.
They're working on it. I'm
Hide
a little
it, you know,
resistant, but
I'm
yeah.
just kind of totally curious, like, would you guys have any interest in seeing a version of that movie?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, good. Thanks.
Yes.
I'm trying to win this battle to make sure he lets us put it on the DVD or
Oh,
something.
yes. Yes. And also, so you said that casting kind of decided the family. So how important was it to present an Asian American family in like a big movie like this?
I mean, it was for us. I mean, we wrote the script as David Kim and the Kim family. So it was from the beginning we wanted to cast a Korean American family. But you know, I grew up in the Bay Area, and my family, I mean, in San Jose, which is where the story takes place. And my family's, both my parents are in the tech industry. You know, both of us come from minority backgrounds, and like for me growing up, it was just a matter of like, it wasn't like the stories about like race or culture that like for us that I always envied, that I never saw myself in. It was mostly the stories that were like high school rom-coms or action movies or thrillers, and like those movies that had nothing to do with any of that, like I never saw myself in. And so when we first started writing this, it was like very important to us to A, do that, and B, like personally, just for me to cast a family that looked like the cast of characters that my parents would sort of work with or bring over for dinner. So yeah, it was a big fight from the beginning, because it wasn't like met with, you know, ease at any point from like anyone specific, or like just, it's just a tough decision to do and get behind. But you know, at the end of the day, the coolest thing about the movie is that it has nothing to do with that at all, and like that's why we wanted to fight for it.
Yeah, it's just, yeah. I have a question about your transition from Windows to Mac.
Yeah.
I think we all know the elephant in the room about that one.
That's what everyone was thinking. Here we go.
No, but I mean, so when you're making a movie that relies so much on whether it's a real kind of website or brand, or it has to look like it. And if you break, it's like there's so many movies where like the tech, they go on like Facebooks or whatever.
MySpace.
MySpace, yeah.
MySpace.
So
yeah.
So you guys have to work with that. Was there any problem? This is kind of nerdy finance question, but just like kind of getting the rights basically, or the permission to use.
What's that? What
does it mean to get rights
or
or
a
something?
permission?
There you go. So artistic.
Yeah.
I mean, we were always really sensitive in how we went about doing it. I mean, one thing you might notice, like Ucast.com
Ucast, yeah.
is made up, right?
It looks believable.
It's based on a real site called YouNow, which is a real thing.
But like, you know, the idea is like in our movie, spoilers obviously for those who didn't see the movie, like she goes,
everyone here saw the movie.
she goes on that website and is catfish, like you mentioned, and like this, you know, horrible things happen to her. So we want to make sure that didn't happen on Facebook or anybody that has a lot of lawyers.
We just made sure, we made sure that we at any point were using the internet in the way that it is meant to be used. Like, and like Seb was saying, if a bad character interacted with someone, make sure that they're interacting on a site that like is just made up. So that's why we introduced that and made up a site for UCast instead of using YouNow, which is what is in real life, is because that company could come back and be like, yo, we don't have these people on our site, you know? And but as far as all the rights to everything goes, every single image that you see in the movie, except for brand logos, has been created by us. Every photo, everything. The rights, like getting the rights to everyone's photo, like the person who took the photo, the person who's in the photo, all the people in the photo, is just an absolute huge workload. And then
on that note, actually, can I say something?
Yeah.
So, every photo is somebody that we know in our lives. And actually, one of those people is here today.
Oh, yeah.
My mom traveled with us to Chicago today. Mom, can you just stand up and take a quick?
She's
like,
the
she's the
piano teacher in the beginning.
All my relatives keep asking my mom to teach them how to play piano now, but it's fine. And on the note though of you saying Windows to like Apple, I think Aneesh and I both made that migration.
Yeah.
But when we were trying to figure out like how to tell the story, like you mentioned, like on a computer screen and still have real actors and real performances, we had a huge revelation in which this app on Apple called FaceTime, that when you finish a phone call with somebody, the app stays open, it shows you what's on the other side of the camera.
We can
so
write
we were
some
like,
stuff.
cool, this is how we're gonna write this movie now. So thank you, Apple.
Yeah.
I think we're going to do questions, so if anybody wants to run to that microphone right over there. All right, first question.
Hello. Were you ever tempted to cut away from the screen sharing style and go to a traditional narrative style for the film for any dramatic moments?
We thought about it,
I
but
would say that.
yeah, we were like, at any point we were like, how the hell are we gonna write this? Let's just cut out. Yeah. No, yes, we were tempted by it, but at the same time, we thought it'd be way cooler if we could just pull this off and have it all be told on the screen. There's probably writing issues that we could have avoided had we just cut out. But we were just like, no, this movie takes place on screens and on devices. Let's just stick to that and see if we can do something good.
And to give you a really specific answer, because I can tell you deserve it, we had a really hard time with like the third act. Like once we knew that like David knew who the bad guy was, what he had to do, it was so tempting to just see like a Steadicam shot of him running
to the car and just like, chasing.
And then we came up with the whole concept of like, the whole reveal of the ending. So like that to us was like the hardest challenge we had. The whole time we knew what the movie was going to be except for that third act.
Yeah.
So there you go. Thanks.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Russ. I want to commend you. It's really good. I heard about it online, and I'm actually editing a short version of my feature-length desktop film. So one of the things that cracked me up, one of your little blurbs, was you have a little news crawl that says, director is probably the prime suspect in killing a film editor.
Yeah. Did anyone else catch that? Okay, so a few people got it. It actually says producer, Hollywood producer, prime suspect in murder of film editors. There was a couple arguments that we had creatively in the edit room with the editors, and there was one particular one where it was like Seb in between the editors, because there's two of them, and we basically, due to that argument, copy underneath the news ticker that said Hollywood producer in prime suspect in murder of two editors.
For the record, that editor is still alive.
Yeah, they're both
So
alive.
far.
Everyone's alive, yeah.
But really quickly, everybody saw that?
Yeah, there's a handful of people who saw it.
So my question is, one thing that I really like tonight, because it's actually helping me with a story issue I'm having, is the whole use of the fact you can go in, like if a family shares a computer, and you did it at the beginning where you click on it and it goes to the mom's profile, or it goes to the kid's profile, and then it seemed like the audience buys it is I'm kind of playing around with that idea too, where you have different desktops or different sort of layers to a computer, and how it seems like the audience kind of just goes with it. You can just, like in your testing and stuff, where you're testing those ideas of, and it worked to me that people follow that the computer's switching from personality to personality.
Yes. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, that was the intention.
Yeah, I mean, we tried it, and then we did a lot of hey, did you guys know this was like Pam's computer? And sometimes people didn't, so we would kind of go make some more obvious changes and stuff like that.
Do it though, it's a good technique.
Hey guys, sorry I've never done a Q&A before.
Think it's our third
that
one,
was
so.
so good, I'm blown away. One question I have is that I noticed that like you referenced Unfriended and Catfish, I guess. This is very challenging and like non-traditional filmmaking. I don't know if there's any movies you used other than those two as some sort of reference point for how to tell your story or like visual ways to tell your story, because a lot of it is very non-narrative and a lot of it is very like musically driven as well. So I didn't know if there was any other like narrative, non-narrative films or any kind of narrative films that helped you just kind of create your vision for this, like just a list of films, I guess, some we could watch when we get home.
Yeah. Well, so there's two references that we had. There's the visual references and then there's the story references. For us, it was always a matter of like taking this crazy visual concept and marrying it with hopefully a very classic story, a very, very simple story, and then putting those two together and hopefully it'll be something cool. On a visual standpoint, yeah, Unfriended, Google, a lot of the Google commercials, some of them that I got to make, were huge. I mean, like, we're just like, okay, this is how you do it. A lot of like lessons on how not to do these things when it came to computer stories. And then on a traditional example, every like missing child story, kidnap story, ransom story, there's so many iterations of that.
We took a lot of cues out also from like a podcast called Serial, if you guys ever watch that or like listen to that.
Yeah, Making a Murder.
Making a Murder, for sure. Like, I think we love the idea, like early on we kind of knew we wanted the movie to be really grounded and kind of represent a true life kind of crime, so we kind of studied a lot of that stuff.
Cool, thank you guys.
Yeah, man.
So, that was actually almost my question, but
Shit.
I guess relatedly, it seemed like, you know, there's a lot of scenes where people are looking into a camera and trying to tell a story, and it reminded me of certain kind of movies like the Blair Witch Project and like Cloverfield and things like that. But can you just repeat like what you said you were doing at lunch? You were looking at a lot of different...
Yeah, so every day when we would be writing for several weeks, we would kind of line up a movie and we would watch like Gone Girl over 3 days. Like, hey,
20 minutes actually.
20-minute lunches. Just like over a week, we'd watch 20 minutes of a movie during lunch, and then just kind of discuss, hey, why did they choose that decision? Why they make those decisions? We watched every movie that took place on a computer screen, which obviously they were like pioneers in a lot of ways, but there was a lot, probably more stuff we kind of found, hey, maybe we should not do that, for example.
Or things that we wanted to do with
exactly.
screen movies.
So like, it was like, that's just, it was a good process for us, because like when you're writing, you're kind of working all day, you got to take a break, but we were kind of workaholics, so like even on our lunch, we're like, let's find a way to be productive.
This was Sev's idea. I would have just like laid down and, All right, see you tomorrow, dude. We learned a lot. Hello.
Hi. So I'm the mom of two very young kids, so first off, now I'm horrified thinking, like, what kind of like technology am I gonna have to worry about 10 years from now? So thanks for that. But along those same lines, I have some friends who are parents of teenagers, and they have told me things about how they've had to search their kids' browser files to see what they've been looking at and search on YouTube. And so I'm curious as to, were there any things that you got maybe from friends or relatives that you didn't even think of to include in here, as far as the different kinds of screens or things? And I was also curious about the idea of maybe where some of the ideas came from, like when you had to kind of reset 2 different passwords to get the one. Is any of this based on real life?
Yeah. So real sites that we were like, whoa, that's crazy, is honestly the vlogging, vlogging. I always say vlogging or vlogging, whatever, one of those. Vlog, yeah. When Margot's like doing that on UCast, when we discovered the website YouNow, I was like, dude, kids are actually doing this. It's insane. That's a totally real concept. Kids just like talking to the computer and they have like doot, and people are like commenting and all that.
For hours.
It's
like
just like
5 hours.
Insane how popular these people have, millions of followers and
I
stuff.
remember like it was you pitched that idea to me first, because we knew that we wanted there to be like this diary of
we needed like the treasure chest beat of like what is the big discovery about her.
And Aneesh was like, yo, there's this thing that these kids are doing, and I was like, nah, dude. A, that's not real. B, no one's gonna believe it's real.
Yeah.
And then like 2 years later, there's like Facebook Live, Instagram Live, like this was all not there when we started writing the script. So that was entirely inspired by that.
Then the password moment.
The password moment was crazy. Like I was devastated because we actually had him finding your password in a whole different way.
Yeah, it used to be like like goes onto Gmail or goes onto Facebook or Gmail. To get it into a Gmail password, it sends you like a code to be a text. And immediately we were like, oh, let's have him do the text, and on her laptop, it's her laptop, there'll be a new message and he gets the text. And then we found out that doesn't work at all, because if your laptop is away from you or something, like iMessage doesn't work.
It's
Yeah,
like
it's a
like
normal text message and not an
SMS
iMessage,
message,
so
yeah.
you wouldn't get it. So we're like, well, how do we do this?
Movie's over.
Yeah, movie's over. And then we were like, oh, let's actually try to break into our own email. So we would go through these options, and eventually we find a secondary email address. And we thought like, oh, secondary email. I know my dad knows my mom's email address. So like, what if we did something there? And then you get into the mom's email, and you could see if you pause it, it's like this really just sad.
I'm getting chills.
There was like 7,000 unread emails. We're like, oh, that's such a little beat that you can kind of skip over really nicely.
It's like he's like visiting like this graveyard of
Yeah.
emails, and every week it's like, hey, new savings on this thing, and it was just like, dude, that one crisis moment for us ended up giving us this beautiful gift
Yeah.
of like, just like on the theme of the father, rejecting grief and everything. So totally
That's
Aneesh
how that
spoke
came
into someone's
around, yeah.
email to make that scene happen.
Thank you.
Hmm?
I want to ask a quick question. Sorry, you're back. Sorry.
Whoa, Steve Prokofiev,
Sorry,
better?
sorry, sorry.
Protocols.
I thought she was actually going to ask you that, but I want to ask, the thing that I took away from this, and I think the reason that this film stands out in this small subgenre, ever-growing subgenre, is that you have, the story isn't about a kidnapping or anything like that. It's about this father who is heartbroken that he doesn't know his daughter anymore. He lost her like months before this ever happened, and that's what I remember about it the most, is like how bad I felt for him in this. I mean, you're glad that, how it works out or whatever, but like I was just like, oh my God, the reason it stuck with me and the reason it stands out, I think, is because you have soaked this in emotion. Talk about that, and is that one of the things you were worried about, not being able to fit into something with a structure like this?
Yeah, I think making an emotional story, I think from day one was like our goal, and like how do we make people cry and feel, and like, I mean, everything Sev and I have tended to do has like always been very like gushy and hearty and all that stuff. So like we just thought like, if we can take this like really mundane like screen that we use every single day, all of us use, like no one associates any emotion with it, and then put something very, very, very emotional underneath it, I think that sort of juxtaposition could sort of really have a really cool effect. So yeah, from day one, we were always like, what is the most emotional story that we can tell with this concept? And kind of went from there and tried to use that as a compass to any decisions that we made. So yeah, the emotion was sort of a big guiding point.
So you have a history of making commercials,
Yeah.
and using technology to hit like these emotional climaxes. There's I can't spoil it, there's a great one he's done called Seeds, where you wear Google Glass and you go on a journey and so forth. Do you know when you kind of realized like the emotional potential of technology, or also the idea of it being about like when there's one that you've made that you've seen it, but it's about like the word being translated, about like the most translated words are like I love you and thanks, and it's like such a great idea about the connectivity of technology emotionally. And I'm wondering for you, when you kind of realized that, especially as you were developing your voice as a filmmaker.
I think growing up, I was saying this actually earlier, but like I've always been attracted to unconventionally like driven stories. Like when I was like my first short film that I ever made, it's a terrible short film, but there's something there. It was called Nug, and it was basically like, it's not related to weed, but like it was like, it was basically like the story of a gun, and it reverses the entire movie, just like rewinds from where the gun ends up to where it begins, and like Nug is gun backwards, obviously. And so like that was the first thing that I ever made, and I love this idea that you can tell. I've always had this theory that like if you tell a normal story in a way that people have not seen before, it like is this really cool feeling of making people feel like they're watching something new, but like grounding them emotionally in something that they know, and that's always has led to positive emotions as far as like reception goes. Technology was just always a way for that to kind of happen. I mean, how we got into those projects is a longer story, but like, yeah, telling a story on, I made a commercial, and Sev and I worked on this, and that took place on Google Glass. It's like 2 minutes long as Seeds is what Nick is talking about. And it all takes place on Google Glass, so it's all from like the POV of someone's eyes. And it's just a story about a guy going from place A to place B to deliver something. And yeah, it's like, it's a tearjerker, but I think like if like, I really like this idea of like just doing something in a way that no one has seen before. And even if you tell the most standard story, it'll feel elevated because you did it in a new way. So yeah, I think throughout my life I've sort of been feeling that, and it's sort of been oddly, you know, happening over and over again. Though that said, like, we will never make another movie on a screen ever again.
Really?
Yeah, no, never.
Is there something else that jazzes you now as a
Yeah, totally.
filmmaker?
We're working.
Real life actors and real life cameras.
Yeah, real life cameras, baby. No, yeah, our next movie is there's very little technology in our next movie. It's another thriller, but yeah, definitely not on computer screens.
Well, what's it about thrillers with you guys then?
I don't know. What is it about thrillers with us?
I don't know. I've never asked myself that.
I just like them. They're thrilling, you know?
They are
thrilling.
thrilling.
Yeah, they're pretty
Anish
thrilling.
Chaganty.
Yeah.
So thank you guys for coming out
Thank
to
you.
this
Thanks
thrilling
guys for coming.
movie.
Yeah, I really appreciate it.
Guys.
Tell your friends.
Yeah, August
August 3rd.
And you know, the trailer's coming out on Thursday, so like, you know, help spread the word if you guys like the movie. We're on Facebook, Instagram, all that stuff, searching movie. We are not on UCast though.
Yeah.
No, you can. Memorial One. Start a Reddit thread about it. You got it.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.